Hey, are we all there? Steven?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes, I can. We'll just give it a minute for people to join. Okay. You see the numbers going up. Hey, we have the chat going. Hi, everyone. Okay, let me know the chat's working. Okay, so just for the sake of time, I think we can get started. I see the chat's moving, so that's great. This is what we like to see. So I just want to send out a very warm welcome to everyone out there. This is a bit strange for all of us. We can't hear any of you, but please do keep interactive on the chat. Put a wave in there, say hi. It does help us feel a little more normal and that we're actually talking to people. Um, so just a warm welcome to everyone. This is our second webinar hosted by CAUFP. And we're very, very excited to have now I'm even forgetting Stephen Sargeant with us tonight. He's going to be talking to us about crypto compliance, an exciting area that I have just personally don't have as much background in, even though I work in the AML space. So before I get started on that, I should just introduce myself and talk a little bit about CAUFP. My name is Vivian Lutwama. I am on the CAUFP board as their VP Finance and Treasury. I do actually have a background in the AML world. I'm currently a senior internal auditor at RBC. And so AML world is my thing. And I got to meet Stephen last year at a foreign professionals mentorship event that he held. I think it was in April 2019, right, Stephen? And it was a really good collaboration with him where he got to ask me to speak on a panel. But it's one of the few things that Stephen is doing in the space of financial crimes and bringing people together and creating recruiting opportunities for them. And so from there, we've sort of built a relationship, and I've always wanted him to come speak with us here at CAFP. I'm just thinking that he has a critical topic to bring that's different in the AML and financial crimes world. Um, and so, yeah, I'm really excited to have him here today. Just a little bit, because I think we have a couple of people who might not be CAUFP members, so don't know too much about us. Are there any people who are not CAUFP members on this chat? Have put a wave on the chat. Anyone who's completely new, hasn't been to a CAUFP event? Yes, I see waves. Okay, good, great. So I'll go into a little spiel about CAUFP. It's the Canadian Association of Urban Financial Professionals. It's a member-based resource organization. We aim to provide a link between corporations and the Black communities through innovative programs that facilitate economic growth, as well as educational opportunities. So we've been around for about 20 years now. It's established ourselves as a catalyst for excellence and for the advancement of Black professionals. Our key pillars that we usually focus on are around professional development, networking, financial literacy, and youth engagement. So our webinar today is more centered around our professional development piece and a bit of virtual networking. And so it's a really cool way we can tag on in this time to sort of think of new ways to bring you guys content and still elevate your profiles and elevate your technical skill set as well as soft skills through productions like this. So Stephen, I'm really excited to have you here. I think I call you my partner in fighting crime. And so I'll just give a bit of a background on Stephen. He's an anti-money laundering investigator and law enforcement liaison at industry-leading cryptocurrency exchange BITFINEX. He previously acquired his AML experience working for international bank HSBC as an AML investigations manager. He has many AML and cryptocurrency designations, including certified anti-money laundering specialist, certified Bitcoin professional, certified cryptocurrency forensic investigator, and certified cryptocurrency investigator. A mouthful. He is a self-professed fintech enthusiast and enjoys learning about Bitcoin, blockchain, and the future of the financial ecosystem. He is passionate about helping others, as I've seen on many occasions, and has written articles and produced podcasts on LinkedIn. He has also collaborated with many other industry leaders in creating events for foreign professionals and women in compliance. Stephen is a frequent speaker at international AML and cryptocurrency conferences such as ACAMS, TAMLO International, and the AML Micro Learning Series, covering topics around blockchain investigations. He is an author in his own right, having co-authored various ACAMS articles and also being a contributing author to the Project Participate report. This report was a compilation of suspicious indicators, typologies, and other significant risks the cryptocurrency industry created with other industry leaders. He did this for regulators, law enforcement, and other industry stakeholders. Stephen, we're extremely honored to have you tonight, and we as the Kofi family welcome you and can't wait to hear all you have to share.
I'm excited. I hear my roof like almost caving in with my son running back and forth upstairs. So if there's any interruptions, I'll have to blame it on him. And I appreciate Vivian as well as Charmaine for introducing me. And this coffee in itself, because I'm really honored to be a part of this webinar, and I'm glad for all the attendees that took time out of their busy schedules. Even though they're not going anywhere, there's tons to do, and I appreciate you sitting down here and listening to me. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to go over quickly with the agenda. So we'll start off with a little bit of an introduction to cryptocurrency. We'll go into cryptocurrency and AML. And then I'll talk a little bit about the differences between cryptocurrency and traditional AML investigations. I have a nice little case study for you of fentanyl trafficking. And we'll lightly touch on regulations and legislation, including FATF guidelines and recommendations and Canadian legislation. And lastly, we'll go into a little bit of professional development. And I've sent Vivian a copy of a handout. It's all clickable. You guys can go into all the resources there. Should lead you to the resources that are pointed out. So let's go through the disclaimers. All the opinions, all the thoughts are my own and not those of any organization that I consult for, including BITFINEX. Unless I say something extremely smart, then I want you to tell everyone that it was definitely a representation of BITFINEX. Everything I'm giving you right now is not legal advice or compliance advice. I'm not acting in the capacity of a paralegal, nor am I giving any sort of investment advice. Any questions that you may have, you can put them in the chat. Keep them general. Please don't give specific information or mention names or organizations. And I'll attempt to answer a few questions at the end of each segment. Let's be social too, guys. Let's really promote this event, Coffee, as well as your own personal brand for taking the time to attend this course today. And as well as it'll hype up my personal brand, and it's also good for my ego. But let's hear our true experience from this event, including our experience with the organizers, the presenters, and other attendees. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Coffee, Vivian, Charmaine, and Meryl. I also want to say thank you to all of you for coming out. This is a really special time for me to construct that actually brand new presentation I've made exclusively for this event. So easily, we're going to go right into the introduction to cryptocurrency. So what is cryptocurrency, or what is a virtual asset, as we'll call it? So a virtual asset, as defined by Financial Action Task Force, as you can read, is a digital representation of value that can be digitally traded, transferred, or can be used for payment for investment purposes. But more importantly, what isn't a virtual asset? So FATF didn't intend virtual asset to include digital representation of fiat currencies, securities, or other financial assets. So this doesn't include any kind of electronic money that you deal with your bank account or things like PayPal or Venmo. It also doesn't include non-convertible, and which means the ability to convert to fiat and centralized virtual assets. So this is things like World of Warcraft virtual currencies that are used mostly for gaming. But keep in mind that there are secondary markets for these, but wasn't an intended market. But the darknet has underground markets for almost everything, including virtual assets. The other side of the spectrum is a convertible and decentralized virtual asset, which would be Bitcoin. So let's discuss some characteristics of Bitcoin now. So the first one we'll talk about is decentralized. Then we'll go into borderless, open source, censorship resistant, math-based cryptography. I did a special icon for limited supply there, and then we'll go into pseudonymous. So let's talk about decentralized. What does decentralized mean? Bitcoin uses a distributed, which means shared ledger technology. It means it's a peer-to-peer network called a blockchain. So that means many computers / nodes in the network have a copy of this ledger, and they also validate the accuracy of the transactions that are posted to the ledger. There's no central authority. That means no one has control. No one person has control over the Bitcoin network. Another feature of Bitcoin is actually borderless. Bitcoin transactions can be sent quickly, usually at low cost, anywhere around the world, which also means it can be sent to and from high-risk countries as well as sanctioned countries without any intermediaries, for the most part, being able to stop or intervene in the transaction. Open source. The Bitcoin blockchain code is open source, meaning anyone can use the code to create similar blockchains. We've seen other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin that are based off the Bitcoin protocol. No one person can make any changes or updates to the Bitcoin blockchain protocol, and as it must be done on a consensus basis. Not only is the blockchain and Bitcoin open source, the community itself is really receiving of other professionals, including anti-money laundering professionals in the space. So they're very open to sharing resources, information, and collaborating on projects. The Bitcoin blockchain operates in a trustless environment. Everyone in the network relies on the mathematical rules built into the protocol, which means that it doesn't have to be, any one person doesn't have to trust each other individually. Since there is no centralized authority, there's no way to place restrictions on Bitcoin transactions. However, as we both know, regulators and law enforcement look to enforce against businesses that use Bitcoin instead, which means the cryptocurrency exchanges, payment process service providers, or any Bitcoin or blockchain company that can convert cryptocurrency into fiat. The Bitcoin blockchain uses a proof of work consensus model. That means each node or each computer in the network attempts to validate transactions, and they solve a computationally intensive math problem in order to reward a block, which is called mining a block. The incentive structure is uses game theory to give an incentive to actually participate and to actually act honestly in the system, and more importantly, to continue to attempt to mine blocks and keep the system going. This mathematical challenge is conducted approximately every 10 minutes, where currently the reward of 12.5 Bitcoin is received by the miner, along with a small fee that's usually paid by the sender. Not to mention, the Bitcoin reward will be halving in a few days, and reward for miners will go down to about 6.25 Bitcoin, and many believe that this will increase the price. Once again, this is not investment advice, just saying. Bitcoin uses the asymmetric cryptography, also known as public key cryptography, which uses public and private keys to encrypt and decrypt data. A Bitcoin wallet stores the digital credentials needed, which is basically a collection of both keys for your Bitcoin holdings, and actually allows you to spend the Bitcoin. The best way to describe this is to think of your high school locker. You know, the one with like the 9-inch nails or Wu-Tang Clan stickers on it. Everyone knew which locker was yours, but only you had the combination to the locker. So people could put things in your locker through the cracks or through the vents at the top. But in order to retrieve anything that's been put in that locker, only you had the combination. So only you could gain access, and probably the ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you gave that code to. Limited supply. So there's a finite supply of Bitcoins that can be mined. 21 million in total to be mined by the year 2040. Almost 18 million have already been mined, but there are reports from companies, from blockchain intelligence companies like Chainalysis, that says that 3 to 4 million of those that are inexistent have been lost forever, meaning someone either lost their private key, they lost the USB or other wallet that they held these keys on, or they sent it to an address that was incorrect. Unlike central banks who can and do increase the supply of fiat currency, which is inflationary, Bitcoin actually has a deflationary model, which makes it scarce and perceived to have more value. Good news is if you can't afford one whole Bitcoin, it can be divisible to 8 decimal points, which is basically 100 million satoshis. So this is the biggest misnomer about cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. Users of Bitcoin don't have to provide full KYC information unless you're dealing with certain exchanges or other service providers. However, based on blockchain intelligence tools that are used, if law enforcement is able to identify who is using a certain cryptocurrency wallet address, they'll be able to track the transactions of that person all along the blockchain. To give you guys an example of that, if you guys remember when J.K. Rowling was writing books under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith, once someone figured that out, they could trace all the books that she wrote back to that pseudonym, to J.K. Rowling. So that's just to give you an idea. Once you break the code, you can kind of figure out who exactly that person is and all the transactions that they've ever completed, for the most part, on the blockchain. So we'll stop right here, just in case you guys have any questions, and for me to take a sip of water.
Any questions? Maybe I have a quick one for you, Stephen. Given
Sure.
The lack of KYC within the cryptocurrency world, how are you seeing regulators handle that currently?
Well, for the most part, what they're doing is they're creating regulations for the crypto exchanges. So any of the exchanges or trading platforms, that's where the regulations are coming to. Not so much if I was sending you a transaction using our personal wallets, there's really nothing that can be done by regulators in that instance. But now if I sent you Bitcoin and you want to convert it to cash and you have to go to a big exchange like Coinbase, Coinbase is going to be heavily regulated. They're going to be following the AML and KYC procedures. Even though not all countries or jurisdictions have these regulations in place, most of them are coming because FATF recommendations have outlined that these regulations should be applied by those jurisdictions. But most crypto companies, knowing that it's coming, are already fairly compliant for the most part. There are a few that are just outwardly not compliant, and we're hoping that with new regulations coming, those ones will be easily spotted.
Right. Okay. So there are a couple of questions here. I'll take the first one. Regarding the last topic of anonymity, what happens when an illicit activity is traced to Bitcoin? That's your first question.
Sorry, what? I don't understand the question. What happens
when an illicit activity is traced to Bitcoin? So given that you can't really trace it to a person, or there's an issue of anonymity with your with the Bitcoin world, what happens when an illicit activity is traced to Bitcoin? So how do we go about tracing something?
Well, we try to use blockchain analytics tools to follow the cryptocurrency and see what other addresses that's interacted with on the blockchain. So what we're hoping for, or what law enforcement's hoping for, is that even if I sent you money, Vivian, and they're looking for me because I stole that money, but you sent it to Charmaine, they would try to see maybe who are any what they call checkpoints that Charmaine interacted with. So if Charmaine sent funds to buy coffee at a local Starbucks, let's say if they accepted cryptocurrency, then law enforcement would subpoena Starbucks and figure out the transaction to figure out who Charmaine was, and then work their way backwards to try and figure out who I was.
Right. Okay, a couple of other questions. I'll maybe take one more, and we'll put whatever else comes in the second session. Sure. Next question is, do you think cryptocurrency will ever be fully regulated?
Well, cryptocurrency like Bitcoin itself can't be regulated. Will because it's a peer-to-peer network, but will the service providers be fully regulated? I just think similar to regular AML or traditional AML, there's going to be regulations. Will it be fully regulated? Yes, for the most part. I don't think any jurisdiction wants to end up on the FATF gray list or the not compliant list. Does that mean all blockchain and cryptocurrency companies are going to follow those regulations? Similar to banks, we've seen huge penalties with banks in the last few years. So yes, it will be fully regulated for the most part, but will everyone be following those regulations to a T? Well, it's something that we'll have to find out, but historically, that's just never going to happen.
Okay. There are a couple more, but we'll probably just stop and another point because just to save time for now. We will
Yeah,
get
no
more
worries.
questions, guys.
I'll speak fast going forward.
No, it's fine. So we can go right back, Shami. Okay.
Perfect, yes. Thanks so much. So what are our concerns after looking at some of the financial, looking at some of the features of Bitcoin? What are our main financial crime concerns? I think obviously we're worried about the pseudonymous or almost anonymous international transfers, in the inability for law enforcement to intervene with certain transactions, and now obviously Bitcoin is a new form of payment. Companies like PayPal and Venmo won't let you pay for certain services. So you're not going to be able to pay for sexually active services on most of those networks. But now with Bitcoin, it actually provides a payment source or a payment option for the dark net, and which is where we'll see a lot of illicit activity. It's really difficult with cryptocurrency to assess where the people are using the cryptocurrency or sending the funds from. So the assessment of sanctions or terrorist financing raises some big challenges. As well, for blockchain intelligence tools, as well as finding the right personnel to hire for cryptocurrency companies that are looking to be compliant, it's very expensive. So it really puts a strain on a blockchain company that is trying to roll out a new tool or product to be compliant or to afford to have that level of compliance or transaction monitoring tools. So these are some of the financial crimes that just a snapshot of some. We see a lot of scams. There's also terrorist financing, sanctions, ransomware we've seen a lot of, and we'll go into details of each one of these. Darknet markets, child abuse material. There was a huge welcome to video service provider that was accepting payment in Bitcoin. They arrested over 300 pedophiles in that case and the operator, but and they saved several victims there. Drug trafficking, just like in traditional finance, there's always going to be that. Hacks and ICO schemes are huge, and specifically in the United States, operating a legal money service business. So if you're a person and you're trading cryptocurrency for fiat on multiple occasions where it's almost business or commercial activity, you have to register with the proper authorities in US and several other jurisdictions, including coming to Canada. Looking at scams right away, we see from the Chainalysis crypto report, we see between January 2017 and July 2019, there was over $8.6 billion worth of transactions in scams. Many of these were attributed to Ponzi schemes, and the reasons for this huge vulnerability of scams is pretty simple. FOMO is one of them, which means fear of missing out. People saw the rise of Bitcoin in 2017, and basically every cryptocurrency after that just said, we are the next Bitcoin. Is pretty much all you had to do for a sales pitch. And at that time, it caused a lot of uncertainty, and the rise of the price of Bitcoin really got a lot of activity. And to go with that, there's a lack of knowledge of blockchain technology or cryptocurrency. So people were investing in ICOs that weren't even humanly possible to produce any kind of product or service that would have been viable. But with the rush to get in on get-rich-quick schemes, they failed to do or educate themselves. And it was straight greed. People were trying to get rich really quickly in a short amount of time. And when you insert greed into anything, you leave yourself vulnerable for scams. I want to go through a quick depiction here of what money laundering looks like. We've seen it in the traditional space. I think most of you that are in traditional AML know what that looks like, but we start off with a predicate offense. It's usually the illegal sale of humans, marijuana, and other narcotics. Criminals end up with a significant amount of cash where they want to attempt to obfuscate or obscure the origins of their illicit activity. So usually with a large amount of cash, criminals will structure the funds to smaller amounts via many different people, which we'll consider money mules in this scenario. And then you'll see the placement stage. So those money mules will deposit the funds via several different financial institutions in hopes of not triggering any reporting requirements or suspicion from bank personnel. Usually once the funds are in the bank, you'll see some layering movement where the funds are usually moved between a number of accounts really quickly in order to obfuscate the origin of the funds and to make tracking the original funds very difficult. And once the funds have been moved around enough that they feel that their funds are clean, they live a lavish lifestyle of popping bottles, yachts, and mansions, as you can be seen by the diagram here. So how does that look like in the cryptocurrency sense? It's fairly similar for the most part. The predicate offense is still the same. So the illegal sale of humans, marijuana, and other narcotics. But I've added in ICO scams and hacks where ransomware are usually paid out in Bitcoin. So usually with a large amount of Bitcoin, they'll try to send these funds to different mixing services, which could take the shape of actual mixing service providers, specialty wallets that have CoinJoin or mixing capabilities like Wasabi wallets, or they use exchanges that can act as mixers as well. Once they feel that the funds are mixed, those funds are usually sent to different service providers in order to turn those Bitcoin into cash. So the first one they would do is OTC desks at the top there, cryptocurrency exchanges, or peer-to-peer exchanges where you can just meet up with somebody at a meetup or in person and then exchange your cryptocurrency for cash. Once again, once the criminals have that cash, they resume their lavish lifestyle of bottles, yachts, and mansions. Although I couldn't put a sneak peek of the way our blockchain analytics tools, I tried to draw it out here for you. So just to kind of show you guys what it looks like, what we see when we're doing our blockchain analytics using the tools. So we'll see a big red circle that shows as a darknet market. So this is not an actual tool, just so you guys know. But in this example, criminals selling drugs on the dark net and receiving Bitcoin in return for the sale, which would they'd like to cash out. In this scenario, they'll send it to various of their private wallets or their co-contributors' wallets to try and obfuscate the funds so it's not a direct link. Then they'll send it to mixers. So once the funds are in mixers, there's no way of really tracking what happened to anything before they sent it to the mixer. Once in the mixer, they feel at ease, so they send it off to a huge exchange, which would be Coinbase. Now, I've put a line there. So just so you guys know, everywhere from the dark net to the deposit at Coinbase, law enforcement can see those transactions. So obviously, once they withdraw the funds, though, it's impossible for law enforcement to see. It's just like if you went to a bank and deposited $20 and then went into the teller and asked her for the $20 back. It's not going to be the same $20. All the funds are pooled together and then they're sent out. So law enforcement can't see what happens once the funds get into Coinbase. So that's where law enforcement has to send either a court order or a subpoena to a company like Coinbase and ask them for further information, including KYC details, IP addresses, and their transaction history so they can see what happened to those funds or where those funds went. Obviously, the main purpose is to get cash, and that's what they do is they convert to cash to once again live a lavish lifestyle of bottles and luxury real estate. So going into the next slide, I want to talk to you guys about the blackmail scam. So I went to an Interbill conference, a darknet working group in Germany back in 2019. Now, speaking of German law enforcement, I guess it happens all over the world, but what they were telling me is the biggest cases that they were receiving that involved Bitcoin or Ethereum was actually what they call sextortion scams. So basically what it is that a hacker or someone that might have attached malware to your computer or phone will send you a message basically saying, hey, I noticed that you're viewing sexual explicit and it's legal, so porn sites or sexually explicit sites, and I can see and I access your camera, I can see what you're doing when you're watching those sites, pay this small amount of Bitcoin, or since we have access to your phone, we'll send you the video to all your connections, to your contacts, and through your email. So this is a huge challenge for law enforcement. One, because the amount of Bitcoin is so small that most people tend to pay it, and the problem is victims tend not to go to police to say, hey, listen, someone found out that I was watching porn and now they're blackmailing me. So the criminals have actually found out a way to kind of almost a fail-safe to protect them going after these small amount of Bitcoins. Ransomware is probably one of the biggest scams that's coming, especially since COVID-19. Everyone's jumping online and they're forced to move online services, including things like Zoom, without spending too much time consulting or even thinking about cybersecurity or taking the proper precautions. So hackers are definitely attempting to exploit any missteps by organizations. Businesses tend to not want to report such security breaches. As you can see in the case with Zoom, there's a huge reputational risk where many people don't want to use the platform, which is why we're on Webinar Ninja. There could be a loss in stock prices or other certain financial risks. And there's a reporting requirement risk. They don't want to report it to the regulators or private authorities or the proper authorities, the privacy authorities, in fear of there being penalties for not having the proper safeguards in place. The next one is ransomware as a service. So if you're not smart enough to create your own ransomware software, criminals say, don't fret, we have you covered. We'll actually provide you a ready-to-go ransomware right out the box where you pay a small portion or upfront fee. Most of the ransomware crimes are seen to be in North America, Europe, and China, as per Chainalysis report. And I think businesses and individuals have to be careful in paying these ransomwares in Bitcoin without filing with the proper authorities. So a lot of these scams are from hackers and known terrorist organizations in North Korea and other jurisdictions, or are located in sanctioned countries. And paying BTC to these outfits could be considered contributing to terrorism if your records aren't kept right. So when law enforcement's doing an investigation, they see you've been contributing to terrorists like ISIS without knowingly reporting it as a privacy or a breach of security, you could leave yourself open or vulnerable to serious penalties or investigations. Next thing I want to talk about is the exchange hack. Here's a little chart of all the top cryptocurrencies that were hacked in 2019. Just to give you an understanding, many of the hacks were through what's called a hot wallet system. The hot wallet system is what I explained with the $20 bill, is where it's a pool of funds going out that someone was able to get into those funds, or those funds were actually live. Some of the hacks are actually due to really sophisticated phishing schemes where people created fake companies, websites, and they attacked several professionals or employees of cryptocurrency exchanges. Some are also caused by technical shortcomings and glitches of certain cryptocurrency exchanges systems, and that's how they gained access. The way that cryptocurrency exchanges have been mitigating these risks is they've increased security and monitoring of suspicious activity using companies like Chainalysis. Another thing is they've actually been very transparent with the rest of the crypto community. So in the past, when an exchange got hacked, they didn't want to tell other people or make it publicly known. So when the funds were sent to other exchanges to be cashed out by the criminals, those exchanges had no idea that the funds were stolen. So there's a lot more transparency now, and there's a lot more information sharing. So those exchanges will also communicate with other blockchain intelligence companies and other exchanges to notify them of the hack. Going into darknet markets. So previously, I think darknet markets were, for the most part, to do with drugs and illicit narcotics. That's been the main driver, especially opioids like fentanyl, which are highly lethal and highly illegal. But many darknet markets actually specialize in information and data. So stolen card information, password, credentials, and even human trafficking. There are new darknet markets are popping up solely for this. If you remember, they're obtaining these data or obtaining the information and stolen data from data breaches such as Ashley Madison, Equifax, FedEx, basically every organization in the world that's has been breached. Usually the information and documentation ends up on the darknet markets. The only concern with the law enforcement is that pretty much they're playing what's called a darknet whack-a-mole. You shut down one darknet, you arrest the operator, and then 10 other darknets pop up. Just due to the sheer supply and demand issues that there are. Most of the operators and the customers will communicate on social media platforms on the darknet. So think of a darknet version of Reddit. And then they aggregate to other darknets and say which darknets that people should be going to. Even worse, they even create their own darknet markets to fill the void for supply. There is one concern from law enforcement and companies like Chainalysis is that new decentralized infrastructures are popping up now. So although the majority of the darknet right now is similar to, although not the majority of the darknet right now is similar to decentralized exchanges where there's no intermediaries involved, dark markets are looking to adopt that same infrastructure. So they don't want there to, it's going to be difficult for law enforcement to arrest anyone when there's no specific operator or no administrators, whether it's similar to the Bitcoin network where everyone's basically an administrator of the network. You would have to go after everyone that's using the network, which makes it that much more difficult. So these are some things that we should be thinking about. What is the future of crypto crimes are going to look like? So the biggest thing right now is non-custodial mixers. So these are the wallets that actually have mixing services in them, like Wasabi and others. Chain hopping, which means a quick conversion. So you have stolen Bitcoin, you quickly convert it to another cryptocurrency like Ethereum and move it along. Privacy coins, many exchanges were actually decided to delist privacy coins, which means remove them from their exchanges due to the fears of harsh regulations. But privacy coins like Monero are still gaining popularity. But in my opinion, it's like walking around with a bunch of cash that smells like weed or marijuana. You know, it's not going to be so much that you can't trace the cash or where the origins of that cash is, but obviously when you dump that cash at the teller, it's going to raise a lot of suspicion and will probably cause the teller to file a voluntarily report or escalate it to the AML department. So although privacy coins are used and they're completely private, the use of them still attracts scrutiny, which defeats the whole point if you're a criminal. And then peer-to-peer, I think peer-to-peer exchanges is going to be highly recognized more now that the travel rule, with what we call travel rule arbitrage. I'll go into a little bit more of the travel when we talk about legislation and regulations. But basically, people aren't going to want to go through exchanges like BitFinex and Coinbase that have an amazing compliance and AML team and that have all the latest and greatest tools that are being used to trace the blockchain and cryptocurrency transactions. They'll figure it's easier to go through an individual person, give them a huge discount on the Bitcoin that they're trying to sell, and still get a large return. So we'll stop here for questions before we go on to cryptocurrency and traditional AML investigations. You may be on mute, Vivian.
Yes, I am. I was actually. So we do have a couple of questions remaining from the initial segment. But just a reminder to everyone else, please do put your questions on, especially related to this new segment that Stephen just spoke on. But I'll get right to the first one, and maybe we'll spend more time on questions this time around. So first question here is, what special measures do virtual currency dealers employ to be in compliant with sanctions regulations?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
What special measures do virtual currency dealers employ to be in compliant with sanctions regulations?
What measures the cryptocurrency
Yeah,
to be?
current VC dealers, what kind of measures or I guess controls do they put in to being compliant with sanctions regulations currently? So what?
Okay, so they use the blockchain intelligence company tools. They use those tools in order to try and trace where the funds are coming from. So those tools will actually categorize certain wallets on the blockchain, and it'll be like, especially when they're on OFAC, when OFAC releases cryptocurrency addresses, they'll actually be able to identify those sanctioned addresses, and you'll be able to see if you or any of your customers have interacted with those specific sanctioned countries.
Awesome. I think that's a good answer and actually very relevant just because most banks right now sort of haven't put in full scale VC controls. I mean, some of the existing controls are trying to mitigate it, but I think it's a little more complex now. And sanctions is a big area that the banks can be open to risk as we all move on to this VC sort of cryptocurrency world. Yeah. Next question, how do we know the cycle for mining? You mentioned miners are receiving bonuses in a few days.
No, so it's what's called halving. So every 4 years, the amount of the bonus. So it started at 50 back in I think 2009, 2010, and then every 4 years it gets what's called halves from that point. So it went down 50 to 25 to 12 and a half, and now it's going down to 6.25. So they approximate the time. I don't think they can know for sure, but they can approximate the time and date. I think it's May 12th, I believe, at 11 a.m. New York time.
Well, okay. What is the due diligence on the account holder since there is no KYC? I guess this is similar to the VC dealers question. But what kind of due diligence is done right now on account holders since there's no KYC?
So for crypto exchanges like ours and for others, there's two sorts of customers. There's customers that have KYC, so the ones that interact with fiat cash or fiat funds, those ones have to be fully KYC. Customers are just interacting from crypto to crypto. So from if you're just sending Bitcoin from one person to another, you don't have to be KYC verified. You do have to provide some information, but then it's just transaction monitoring activity. So we can monitor the type, there's suspicious indicators that we can monitor and then identify. And if we find anything that is suspicious, we'll then reach out to the customer and ask them to provide KYC and EDD at that time.
Awesome. Can someone like chain analysis or something, I guess, like chain analysis trace even when mixers and tumblers are used?
They can't trace through them. So if I send the funds to a mixer and then I send the funds from the mixer to BITFINEX, BITFINEX will only be able to see the transaction from the mixer, which will still highlight suspicious activity if someone's using a mixer, but they wouldn't be able to trace through the mixer.
Right.
So if I sent money from my BitFinex account to you, Vivian, and then you send it to a mixer, sorry, if I sent my money from a BitFinex account to a mixer and then to you, you would only see the funds go to the mixer. You wouldn't be able to see the transaction from the mixer to you.
Right, which is basically in
point.
the traditional money laundering sense, the commingling of funds.
Exactly.
And I guess what is central here is we always, as we know, the bank is sort of your centralized engine between money laundering, and is usually where the regulators or law enforcement can target in terms of managing money laundering and setting up controls. What areas in your, this is my personal question, just by the way, what areas do you think, given that the mixers is probably the easiest target but the hardest to regulate right now, and I see that's where you can sort of find the most information but probably don't have any information. So which areas within the cycle, within the cryptocurrency world, do you think is the most pivotal for regulators and law enforcement to sort of pin down right now?
I think you're always going to go after the big exchanges, right? Because if you want to launder money, going after if I met you at a local meetup and I want to launder $1 million, that's really difficult to do. And you have to think a lot of these people, and we can see you eating. A lot of these people, a lot of these people are criminals are trying to launder large sums of funds. That's why they usually go through banks, because it's easier to do. They can move around large sums of funds. So when it comes to cashing out, cryptocurrency criminals are still going to look to go to exchanges where they can cash out a large amount of money in a short amount of time. Using like a peer-to-peer is not great. They can still try to do that. And over-the-counter desks who specialize in large movement of funds and aren't that highly regulated is probably the place I would put the most emphasis. Over-the-counter accounts for most of the criminal activity during these investigations because they're brokers and they don't have as much regulations as of right now.
Right. And I mean, I guess I do know that they're not regulated as much, but are you guys seeing them cooperate when you have investigations right now, or are they obviously not as easy to get information out of them?
It's tough because a lot of the over-the-counter desks or operators are operating on exchanges. So they'll be within a large exchange already. So it's just a matter of the exchange cooperating, not so much them directly. So if I'm an OTC desk operator and I'm on Coinbase, I can't reach out directly to the OTC desk. I just see the transactions going to Coinbase. So I reach out to Coinbase, and it's a matter of if Coinbase is going to give me the information I need to help out with the investigation. And that usually to do that, you need to have law enforcement that gives them the legal right to give over the information. Because similar to financial institutions, they're not going to release information to third parties without a court order.
Awesome. Sorry guys, I didn't realize my video was on. But we're at home, all of us are. So the last question, and I do see another one, maybe we'll do the last two. Most of ML activity using crypto is generally within the placement and layering phases. Are there any documented incidents of Bitcoin being used as an integration vehicle? Given the potential for value increase compared to fiats and increasing acceptance as a payment mode, Bitcoin would have appeal for a pseudo-anonymous growth of money launderers' assets.
I think I don't see much from the integration standpoint. Like usually they're gonna want cash in order to buy those things. It's still very difficult because people can see transactions on the blockchain. So them buying a house with Bitcoin's really easy to be followed by law enforcement. So from that aspect, you don't see a lot of integration from that aspect. Um, Mind you, if they, let's just say if they bought Bitcoin in 2000 or they did illicit activity in 2015 and they held on to it, then the actual Bitcoin that they're holding on to grows in an investment. I think maybe that's what that person was alluding to. So actually just holding on to the Bitcoin is a good investment on its own. But usually they don't do that either.
That's a fair point. And I think the key is with Bitcoin, it's the larger fish to fry that you need to target, right? So it's the big purchases. It's and that's all what integration's about. So doing a peer-to-peer type of integration isn't necessarily what the law enforcement would target. Last question for now. What impact do you see new platforms like Facebook's Libra blockchain could have on the industry and its regulation?
You know, Facebook's a weird one because the regulators were like, before they even started to release anything about that, the regulators were like on them pretty hard. So I think they've a little bit shifted. I haven't followed Libra closely since they've shifted. I think they came out with a new white paper. So in that aspect, I'm not 100% sure what it is from a regulatory standpoint, but they aren't going to be able to do anything without regulators being right beside them when they do it. And we haven't really seen that much for many cryptocurrencies or many white papers or many releasings of ICOs. We haven't seen regulators intervene so quickly, which is what they did there. From other aspects, I would think that it's going to bring more adoption. A lot of people are on Facebook, use Instagram. It's going to bring a lot more adoption and awareness. If you remember, like a lot of people knew about Libra, but didn't know much about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. But when Libra came out, it did garner a lot of awareness. So I think it brings more awareness to the industry. But it looks like it's going to turn into more of a Venmo type payment system than it is going to be a decentralized cryptocurrency.
Good. I think that was the last of the questions for now. So you can go back.
Sure. Perfect. Thanks, Charmaine. And Viv. So I just want to quickly talk about some of the differences between a cryptocurrency investigation and a traditional AML investigation. So usually for us in the cryptocurrency sphere, especially working for a centralized exchange where we do have control of the transactions and we're processing the transactions on behalf of our customers or users, it does give us the opportunity to conduct investigations as the transactions are being conducted, which is not like a regular institution where you're usually doing a look back of 3, 4, 5, 6 months after the transaction's already been completed. So this gives us a lot more leverage when we're asking probing questions or when we're doing KYC or EDD checks. And it gives us the ability to actually stop money laundering or even attempted money laundering in the process. Many exchanges have what they call abandoned accounts, where literally the exchanges question the customer or ask for KYC, and the customers literally refuse to give it and just left what we can only suspect to be illicit proceeds on the platform. Now, the exchanges can't really claim that, I think, until after 10 years, but there's millions of dollars worth of abandoned funds where the criminals are not even taking a chance to try and retrieve those funds, especially when it comes to hacks. If they aren't able to get the funds out of an exchange after a hack, they usually just leave it there. They don't try to provide KYC or documentation. Another thing that is different is, and this might be similar to some financial institutions, especially small businesses or money service businesses, but a lot of our onboarding and interactions are non-face-to-face, obviously. So all of our investigators and onboarding team have to have an understanding of the global identifications, as well as we use image verification tools, which is a must for determining who the customer is and if it's legitimate ID. We have to deal with synthetic ID. We also, because Bitcoin is used on the dark markets to purchase stolen identification, exchanges as well as other service providers see a lot of stolen identification, or people just use third parties. So if I am an illicit actor, Vivian, you look like a nice person, I would probably use your ID or get you to submit your ID in order to move around my stolen funds.
I'm
So
not.
investigators have to use a combination of open source technology. They have to ask probing questions, and they have to really make an assessment. Does the activity on the customer's account match the person? So if it's an 85-year-old woman that has submitted the ID, and she's moving around millions of dollars of Bitcoin, although not impossible, we're going to be highly scrutinizing certain transactions like that. As well, what's sexier in our industry, we get to actually use blockchain analytic tools. So although in the traditional sense, you can't track cash unless you have serial numbers for the most part, but you can track Bitcoin and determine if it has exposure to any illicit service providers, as we saw in the previous slide. So there are challenges with coins like Monero, which can't be traced on the blockchain, but once again, it draws higher scrutiny. Unfortunately, these tools aren't cheap, but they are worth paying for. When regulators come knocking on your cryptocurrency door, it shows that you are made a deep investment into your compliance program. Although banks do have certain options to share information, crypto companies can actually share information quite easily because they can provide the cryptocurrency addresses or the wallet addresses, which don't give away, for the most part, personal identifying information. Also, many groups of exchanges and blockchain analytic companies actually share information and regarding hacks or illicit activity quite easily and openly versus banks, which tend not to share that information. I know there are some projects. We also have Project Participate, which is a public-private partnership where the members provide suspicious indicators and typologies to different stakeholders like regulators, law enforcement, and financial institutions. I know banks usually only provide certain information with each other when it comes to mortgage fraud, but I haven't seen it done much in the AML landscape. And another cool thing is we get to liaison with law enforcement. So law enforcement usually comes to us during the investigations, and we work very closely with law enforcement, and they actually turn around their cases pretty quickly. So from the time that an exchange or service provider provides information to law enforcement, you usually see arrests very quickly, usually see public arrests and public announcements notifying the public of what's going on. So working with law enforcement is a lot closer than what you would do in a traditional standpoint. So I'm going to go through a quick case study. This is not something that happened on my exchange, but it's one of the major case studies when it comes to fentanyl trafficking. So this case study is for Aaron Shamo. He was called on the darknet market the pharma master for obvious reasons. So quick case study. He was a 28-year-old. He was an early adopter. He was actually mining Bitcoin shortly after it started. What he was doing was actually buying opioids and fentanyl which was bought from it was bought from China, and he was actually selling it on darknet marketplaces, specifically Alphabay, where he was accepting Bitcoin. The problem was he was actually passing off that fentanyl as oxycodone, and fentanyl, I think, is from 10 to 100 times more lethal, which led to several overdose deaths in Utah that were connected directly to him. He was arrested in 2016 with and there's multiple reports, but this is some of the figures that have been provided. The reports vary in amounts, but with over 500 Bitcoin, which would have been at the time up to $10 million, he also had USD worth $1 million in cash and over $500,000 in pills. So the fentanyl that he was importing from China, he was actually using the U.S. Postal Service and was sending those drugs directly to the customers using that same process of using the U.S. Postal Service. Here's a quick diagram that shows kind of the flow of funds. So as we start, you can see it starts with the purchase of fentanyl and other opioids directly from China. This is usually done based on reports from companies like money service businesses. This is usually done through small money service businesses where criminals make payments to chemical vendors in China. Many MSBs have been catching on. Sorry, the name I was looking for was Western Union, but many MSBs have been catching on, so criminals have to change their approach. So once he got the drugs, he would then go and sell those drugs on the darknet marketplaces. Some of these sites are well organized and operated. They look like Kijiji and eBay, and selling drugs appears to be reasonably easy. I don't know, but even the darknet markets have escrow accounts. So if there's any dispute between the seller and the buyer, they can easily be resolved through a dispute mechanism. So once he sells the drugs, he obviously receives a large amount of Bitcoin now via profits. So the sale of narcotics and other illicit activities, they will now, once they get those Bitcoin, look to convert them. So many times criminals will go to peer-to-peer trading, especially drug dealers. They like companies like local Bitcoins. It is known that they usually offer a discount, sometimes up to 50% to convert on cash. So if you're an unsuspecting person that's looking to buy Bitcoin and you see a deal, like probably most in your membership that are looking for a good steal of a deal, this is where you could get caught up with money laundering, as you probably want to buy Bitcoin for cheap and you don't mind giving the cash. But once again, frequent activity of buying or even selling Bitcoin for fiat companies, fiat currency, is considered and constitutes operating a money transmitter business in the United States and soon to be in Canada. And without the proper registration, it could lead to severe criminal charges. So once he's converted those funds into cash, you'll see he just goes right back through the process. He takes that cash and then he starts buying fentanyl again from China. And this is an easily repeatable process, and you can see by the amount he was caught with how much money that this scheme can make. So for our traditional financial institutions on the line, especially those AML investigators that might not have access to cryptocurrency tools or not understand what's happening with the transactions, I've created a list of red flags. So some things that you can actually look out for with your entities. So the first one is foreign entities. So if you see anyone sending funds, especially into China, for chemical companies or companies that don't have a proper business model. So if they're sending large amount of funds and the company that they're sending to doesn't really have a clear business model or is to deal with chemicals, but you're not sure exactly what, that's definitely a red flag. When it came to the vendors that were using the dark net, they would also use cash deposits. So they would deposit funds at several different locations. Something else to look for is postage and shipping transactions. Usually these criminals have to send out a large sum and a large amount of packages. So you're going to see a lot of transactions that have to do with postals, whether it's stamps, packaging, boxing. So that's something to look out for that you can see from your financial institution end. Also, there's going to be a large volume of transactions, maybe with virtual assets providers. So if you see a large amount of money coming in from exchanges, but you don't know how that person's actually coming up with the source of funds, that's definitely a red flag. You can actually take a customer's email address and see if it's connected to peer-to-peer or even crypto forms. Simply Googling the email address might pull up a local Bitcoin account, and usually those profiles show exactly how many transactions a person's conducted. So you can see actually if they're doing commercial activity using their financial institution's account. Transactions with pharmacy. We saw a lot of this with Project Guardian findings, where actually pharmacies were actually compromised by organized crimes. So we saw a lot of fake invoicing coming from the pharmacy, transactions from the pharmacy. So that should raise suspicion, especially if the transactions are not in line with the customer's KYC profile. As we saw from this person, he was moving around millions of dollars and he was barely 30 years old. And I'm not sure if he had a legitimate income whatsoever, but it definitely is not matching up with the amount of money he's moving around. So a traditional financial institution, even if they're using a lot of cryptocurrencies, they're going to have cash on hand. They're going to have to deposit a lot of cash or use other financial products. So something that traditional financial institutions should be looking out for. Also, if the user has an encrypted email address or is using VPN, although VPN is used mostly by all organizations, that's something that you should definitely look out for. So we'll stop right here. If anyone has any questions about fentanyl trafficking or any other questions I can answer before we go on to a short snippet on regulations and legislation.
There are a couple of questions, yeah. This time I should pay attention to my video. Okay, so the first one, what impact do you see central bank digital currencies having on the future of crypto?
Sorry, say again. Sorry.
What impact do you see central bank digital currencies having on the future of crypto?
Honestly, it's just like electronic money, in my opinion. Just like how you see the balances on your bank account now, the central bank can increase and decrease supply. I don't think it's not our decentralized cryptocurrency, so I don't think it's gonna affect the core cryptocurrency crowd that much. It's just gonna be an easier means for them to move around money.
I mean, does it affect the supply? I'm just thinking off my head. That increases the supply. Do you think people are going to? It puts down the value of cryptocurrency and it makes it more accessible to people to then want to use it less.
I don't think so because it's going to be like digital currency. It's not going to be decentralized and it's not going to have the same features that we went through as Bitcoin. So it's not going to make it much more attractive. It's really just, it's going to be like a balance sheet entry for the most part, but in a digitized form. That's just my opinion.
Okay. One more question, and anyone else who has questions, please put them up before I take over. Um, During client onboarding, will exchanges ask the client to provide certified source of wealth documents? So source of wealth.
Source of wealth, usually it's a little bit trickier in cryptocurrency because you could have an 18-year-old client that might have been an early adopter in cryptocurrency that has a large amount after the spike in 2017. But usually what we try and do is determine the source of wealth. So even if you have cryptocurrency, unless you're a miner, you had to purchase that cryptocurrency at some point using fiat funds. So what we go after is to find out what was the transaction that you used in fiat before you converted it to cryptocurrency. Usually if a person can't easily give that information or they don't have any idea or they bought it, usually everyone buys it from cash, buys it with cash, we can start to see some of the red flags start to appear if they're buying all their, especially large amounts of cryptocurrency in cash, but they don't have financial statements showing those cash withdrawals from their source of income.
Right. Next question. What drives the price of Bitcoin?
Everything. Like this presentation probably spiked cryptocurrency maybe a couple pegs. To be quite honest, there's so many factors. It's just like anything else. It's less supply and demand.
Yeah.
I think of cryptocurrency like I think of real estate. Like what drives the value in real estate? They were saying through COVID that real estate, the prices were going to go down. Like me and my wife just purchased a property, and prices definitely did not go. We did not get the deal that we were looking for. So as long as there's a supply and demand, it's going to continue to dictate the price. And fear, right? People that are speculating and investing in cryptocurrency, they're probably not cut out to be trading at that level in cryptocurrency if they haven't really traded in stocks before. But usually fear drives everything. Like if Trump says he doesn't like cryptocurrency, the price could go down. If China says they might be thinking of blockchain projects or opening up cryptocurrency and not banning it in India, prices could go up. So it's actually, or if they see large values of transactions from what they consider whales, so people that move around large funds, large amount of funds in the network, you could see it. People are saying that the halving is going to, in 3 days, that Bitcoin should be spiking up to almost $3,000-$4,000 more than it is right now. Once again, not investment advice, but just something to think about.
Yeah, and I think it's because I'm in layman's terms to me, it's essentially the stock market just on steroids in the sense that there's not as much supply, and so the smallest movement or change brings a more drastic movement in price.
We saw what happened with Tesla. I think it was Tesla when Elon Musk smoked weed on Joe Rogan's show, right? And they're saying his account got hacked, I believe, last week or this week, and the price dropped again. So cryptocurrency is very finicky, and that's why it's tough for people that are day traders to kind of predict it because anything can happen.
Right.
Historically in real estate, there's certain cycles that it goes through all the time. Cryptocurrency, it's really hard to peg the cycles, but I think it's definitely fluctuates.
Okay, so last question for now. Where do you see the future of cryptocurrency in the next decade?
We did a panel on this, and to be quite honest, I see it being more used by everyday people, but they're going to have to work out the kinks to make it easier. Like, I personally don't want to operate my own Bitcoin wallet because like I lose passwords just on my regular account. So I don't want to lose, I don't want to be my own bank. I don't think a lot of people are ready to be their own bank. They still want to make a mistake or send funds to the wrong person or write down the name of who was supposed to receive a check, and they still want to be able to pick up the phone and call the bank and say, hey, fix this for me. I don't think we're ready to get past that until crypto can offer that same insurance.
Yeah, totally agree. Any other questions? I think we can go on from here.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So we're going to get into, I'm just going to touch lightly on the FAT of travel rule as well as Canadian legislation that's been enacted. I don't want to go too much into this because I want to save some time for questions. And I'd like to talk about career development, personal branding, all that good stuff. So what is the travel rule? So similar to wire transfers, the originators and beneficiaries of all transfers of the cryptocurrency must exchange identifying information. So if I use the word VASPs, VASP means virtual asset service providers. I can use it interchangeably with cryptocurrency exchanges. They're basically the same thing for the most part. So cryptocurrency exchanges will have to know this information of who the funds are being sent to prior to facilitating the transfer, which kind of goes against the whole ethos of Bitcoin being a decentralized protocol, a decentralized network that was meant for peer-to-peer exchange without the exchange of identification information. Financial institutions use this fairly easily using the SWIFT mechanism to meet these obligations. And although there are many technical solutions being proposed right now in the cryptocurrencies ecosystem, it will have to be implemented by the majority of exchanges to be satisfactory, probably for global regulators. So if the top exchanges want to use a system that allows you to transact easily and follow the travel rule, you have to be able to have the majority on board. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. Each person can't use their own system, similar to why SWIFT wouldn't work out if there were several different SWIFT mechanisms. The good news is that I think I mentioned it before, is that the non-compliant or the KYC deficient exchanges will be forced to be more compliant or risk losing the ability to operate legally anyway. They might still operate illegally, but they risk the ability to operate legally. Criminals also may look to move away from cryptocurrency exchanges that put in these policies, and they might want to tend to use peer-to-peer exchanges or possibly even underground over-the-counter operators to move around their illicit gains. This will make it actually difficult for law enforcement. I know, Vivian, we were talking about sending the funds through an exchange or a checkpoint and being able to work backwards for law enforcement. But this is difficult. If nobody's using the cryptocurrency exchanges that have all the KYC and they're going underground, similar to traditional financial crime, it's going to means less ill-gotten proceeds are moving through the exchanges, and that means law enforcement won't be able to get as much information that they need to conduct their investigations. So we saw in Canada, they've been pretty much taking the opportunity to mimic those FATF guidelines and the Proceeds of Crimes and Money Laundering Terrorist Financing Act. So we're going to go through a couple quick points here. Anyone dealing in cryptocurrencies in Canada will be subject to register as an MSB. So this will include cryptocurrency exchanges, over-the-counter desk, and custodial wallet service providers, meaning wallet service providers that actually hold your funds at some point for a certain period of time. Foreign crypto companies that actually advertise their services to Canadians will also be required to register, but as a foreign MSB, and meet similar obligations. So those obligations mean that you're going to have to meet all the requirements of an MSB. Most people already know this in AML, but the requirements are to appoint a CAMLO or a person designated as a CAMLO, having policies and procedures, a risk assessment, as well as developing training for your employees. And in Canada, there's a fifth pillar, which is having a effectiveness review every 2 years. Some of the reporting and record keeping requirements will be crypto companies will have to do, similar to a large cash transaction report, they'll have to do a large virtual currency transaction report of transactions of $10,000 or more in certain time frame. They'll also have to originate information for transactions that are more than 1,000. And they'll have to do PEP determination for transfer over $100,000. And there's also other requirements, but those are some of the main ones. They'll also be required to do ID verification. So the good thing is they're no longer to have original documentation, especially with the technology and non-face-to-face onboarding process. Instead, the reporting entity will be entitled to rely on documents where it's valid, authentic, and current. So basically, you can send e-copies of your documentation, and that should meet the requirements. And I don't know if there's any questions before we go on to career development.
Yes, one. How was the drug imported from China able to escape US custom checks? I guess that's with the case study that you went through.
Well, similar to the mailing system, I think there's a good percentage of drugs, guns that still get into the US and all countries. They're not able to protect their borders. They obviously do pick up on trends and they find information that can help them mitigate that from happening. But similar to traditional drugs, they get into the country pretty easily, actually. Huge crates. Border services are not checking all of those crates, and it's just the cost of doing business, unfortunately.
Right. And just remind me, what did lead to them catching that guy?
They were able to start conducting surveillance on them from picking up the packages.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And the overdoses. Usually, what happens when people start dying, they usually work their way backwards from the death to see who's supplying the fentanyl.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think in that case too, he had several people working for him, several people directly out of high school and college that were working for him, basically his friends. And usually, when things start happening and law enforcement starts going after people, friends are the first people to turn on you.
Yep. Snitches. No other questions at this point. I might have one given just because I'm most interested in the investigation piece in this whole thing. From the financial institution perspective, how well are you seeing them investigate Bitcoin or virtual currency crimes? Are they hiring out to organizations like yours, like BITFINEX, or are they actually conducting their own investigations?
Sorry, law enforcement or the actual financial
Right,
institutions?
the actual financial institution.
Some of them, especially some of them that like BMO, we know has an account with, CoinSquare, which is the top Canadian exchange, has an account with BMO. So BMO has their own internal team, I believe, of cryptocurrency investigators or people that are qualified to do cryptocurrency investigations. But I don't feel the banks are doing much. I think the the model right now is that if it's a cryptocurrency transactions, it's what they call an automatic suspicious report,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily the case. And that's a reason for presentations like this to give people an understanding of what are the crimes, what are the indicators we should be looking for, especially from a traditional financial institution. So you're just not reporting everything as a suspicious activity or suspicious transaction report. They wouldn't contract out companies like ours, but they would use companies like Chainalysis to do their investigations, their transaction monitoring as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I mean, I just know there's a zero tolerance policy from most of the banks that I've had experience with. So I think, I mean, there is no education. That's why they're not informed. And so I think it's an evolving space. We're going to have to start seeing, I think, them getting well versed and educated in the space to then do their own investigations and actually operate in this world. Especially given that regulations are sort of coming to the forefront now. On the MSB front, there's no doubt they're going to be held to the same level.
I think many banks take the kind of stance that we don't deal with crypto companies, so we don't transact. But like they just don't know the signs of the companies that they are using them. So I think education is important. And the good thing is, and I have the resource page and the handouts for the attendees, is that there's a ton of information on how to look at some of these transactions and how to do some of the investigations on your own and what questions to ask when someone is saying that they've received transactions in cryptocurrency, and not being scared to, if I worked at a bank and I would reach out to people that are on my team or that I know at a crypto exchange and say, hey, this is the transactions that the person's doing. You don't have to give any personal information. These are the type of transactions that this person's doing. What do you think this could be? Or what do you think I should be worried about or looking out for? So the information sharing in the crypto sphere is pretty open. You know, everyone's willing to contribute and help out. So not being scared to ask for the odd, favor to kind of give some background or insights.
Yeah.
But looking it up and doing it yourself is always the best.
Yeah. Based on traditional money laundering, I do know the information sharing is there, at least between the FIs and the regulators themselves whenever something is getting investigated. But as you said, it's easier for the information sharing between the actual conduits, which is your currency exchanges, whereas in the banks maybe there's a bit of work that still needs to be done between FI and FI. So I think one of the areas that we also we can't take away from the fact that banks are probably transacting with other VCs as well as VC dealers, at least, even if it's from that correspondent banking model, because I think that's where I've seen so many excuses of we don't actually deal with this or we don't actually have this crime going on here, but we do have corresponding banking with those people and then that's how we detract from any accountability. And I
Right.
think at least from in my space where I have to look at what controls we need to be thinking up of and from an emerging risk perspective is we need to get educated on the Bitcoin virtual currency world. and learn what type of controls we should be putting in place, and learning about the existing analytical technology we can employ within our current systems.
Yeah, it's important. And usually, if like you work one crypto case at your firm, you're like the crypto expert. So getting a little additional knowledge doesn't hurt. It carves out a good niche for you at your job. And when they do build out something like a cryptocurrency department, a cryptocurrency team, you're usually the first person they're gonna think to go to. So it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue into your next topic.
Yeah, you saw that, eh? You saw the alley oop there.
So let's learn about how we can learn more about crypto and become experts.
I'll go through this really quickly because I think we have about 15 minutes left. So, as we were just talking about, Vivian, like education and learning, there's so much material in the handout, which has been which I could say proudly was most of it was curated actually by one of the professionals I work with, Melanie Lefebvre, and I have her information at the end of this presentation. Has everything that you need to know if you're in Toronto, where to go, how to get the information, the webinars, the courses, everything. This is like a one-stop fits all, and it's clickable, so you don't have to like copy and paste. You just press it and go straight to networking and events. There's a really small niche cryptocurrency compliance industry that there's some really great thought leaders in the space. Amber Scott, Joseph Ayuso, Peter Warwick, Charlene Ches. Like, there's a ton of professionals in this space that actually give you information, and they actually provide documentation and reports and articles and podcasts and video series and host their own events. So there's no shortage of being able to meet people. And as we talk about, do your own research and reach out to somebody if you have questions. Doing your own research, coming up with some hypothesis, and going to somebody like a Peter Warwick or like an Amber Scott and asking them what they think is such a great way to get involved in the industry. You never know what projects you're going to end up on. And unlike traditional, if you do happen to get a job or an interview in cryptocurrency, the one thing one of the recruiters I spoke to before getting a job with BITFINEX, she's like, show enthusiasm. This is not the time to be coy, pretend like you don't like the job to try and leverage that to get more money. This is the time to like leap through the screen. Like, my eyes were bugging even more than they usually do when I was having a video interview. I think I was literally shaking the laptop when I was speaking to somebody because I wanted to show them how much I wanted to work with their firm. I wanted to show them how much I enjoyed the space. And what anyone that will tell you in the crypto world and crypto compliance world, it's something I need to do more of, is basically do it yourself. Practice using the software. Practice opening up a wallet and sending transactions and trading on platforms. That's the best way to kind of see how the criminals are moving the funds around. And that's the best advice I got when joining this field, is pretty much do it yourself, see what you come up with, and then adapt from that point. And this is the cryptocurrency resources that I have. As I said, Melody crafted it. I came up with some additional things and courses and certificates to throw in there. So you guys will get this handout. You can go through it easily. It has everything there. And if you want to add to it, by all means, send me a message if you want to add or include some more. There's a second page of it. So this is Melanie. She's my like technical guru. She actually does a lot of technical work, not just in our organization, but with a lot of the other cryptocurrency. And even she was with the TCAE doing the technical stuff with their ACAM study group. So if you have any technical questions, she's offered her services. You can reach out to her anytime via that email. She used to mine actually privacy coin Monero. She's an avid gamer. She's a escape room aficionado. So she's a jack of all trades, and she's kind enough to be willing to offer her services. And we do co-presentations for organizational training. And that's it. That's my information. You guys can reach out to me anytime. I love talking crypto compliance. I love being a speaker, moderator, personal branding. I can give you some tips on that too. But if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out to me. And that's my presentation. I really appreciate you guys staying with me until this late on a Thursday. I know the kids are probably banging down your houses like they are mine. So if you have any questions, I can stick around for a bit, answer any questions. Or if you guys just want to talk crypto compliance or coffee, I'm here to help.
Yep. Any other questions? Please, can we go through the course page again?
You'll get the handout, so you'll have the full handout. That will be sent out after this email. I can go back to it, but
yeah, a lot of thank yous coming up in the chat. Any other questions?
I saw like Carrie made a comment that she pictured her 80-year-old mom moving around millions in Bitcoin. It can happen, Carrie. It can happen, but I'm gonna stop it from happening if she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Great presentation. Great. Thanks, guys. Wish we could see you in person and sort of this would have been our networking time. We could have had a glass of wine and sort of toasted to each other. Okay, so a couple of questions have come up. You made mention of do it yourself. How does practicing using softwares affect our CRA reporting? Do we need to report it during our yearly tax filing? Good question.
You mean if you're investing and making money? Yeah, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not gonna touch that, but you should consult your local tax regulator. I'm assuming in Canada, if you make profits using Bitcoin, just goes to show how much profit I've made. If you make profits using Bitcoin, you should probably report it similar to how you report in other investments. But I don't know the nitty gritty when it comes to that. But I like the way you're thinking. Someone looks like they're gonna invest some before the halving.
Yeah. In the crypto space, which of these certifications would you recommend, CFCS or CAMS? Yeah,
in the crypto space, neither to be quite honest.
Those are more
CFCS is they're more AML. CFCS is really good because they do have crypto specific training, and they actually offered scholarships for those that were interested in getting crypto. That was last year. I think they moved on to sanctions, but they do have a strong standpoint. Honestly, for me and my best advice, and I'm not promoting anyone, I like blockchain intelligence groups certificate training. It is there, but if I was getting into the industry, I want to use the products and tools that the industry is using. So I would tend to go to Chainalysis. They're coming out with just a regular crypto knowledge series, so a certification just on crypto knowledge, and then they have a certification for the use of their tool. And honestly, if you can go through that certification, I've gone through it. If you go through that certification and do well in the exam, you're pretty much ready for AML investigations if you already have AML experience. There is one caveat, is they don't give it out. They don't allow you to attend if you're not a customer of theirs. So if your organization doesn't use them, it's a little bit difficult. I've pushed them to send it out to everyone and to make it available to everyone. So I will let you know, or I would just reach out to them and beg them, honestly. Because right now, because of COVID, it's about $6.99 to take the course, and it's done virtually. Because usually it's in person, and it's a lot more expensive. So $69.9 US. So that's like $18,000 Canadian.
Yeah. And so I think for me, who is not an expert, just I attend all the conferences that you speak at instead. How easy is it to pick up on the concepts of blockchain, Bitcoin, and then use my AML knowledge to sort of transition into Bitcoin or cryptocurrency investigations?
I'm lucky because I'm not a technical person. I'm still not a technical person, and there's a lot of concepts I still don't honestly understand for the most part. But I have access to Melanie, it's great to have someone that has the technical knowledge and has the AML experience as well, because then they can kind of break it down for you what you need to know from an AML standpoint and how the technology works. The person that was doing the investigations before I even started, they know the platform. They gave a wealth of information. So I'd say finding someone that understands it or that works in the field. And honestly, I'm not promoting my services. I would pay Melanie to go through it all, and she'd probably do it for a lunch or for free. But just going through all the technical aspects and I learned by seeing other people do. So attending all the conferences, the webinars, the TCAE, the Toronto Compliance Group that Susan organized, had Melanie on it a few weeks ago. They probably will be doing maybe longer sessions. That's something that I personally would pay for, because then you could just reach out to the person afterwards. When you go to a lot of these other organizations, you might not be able to reach out to the organizer or organization if you have questions afterwards.
Right. One question has come up. If Bitcoin is loosely regulated and you know the illegal elements use this mode to launder money, then why is law enforcement can't stop the usage? Does this have any negative impact on the economy or monetary system?
Well, like if you really think about it, I think Bitcoin crime is probably like a small percentage, like probably less than 1% of all financial crime. The banks are the biggest money launderers in the world using straight cash or other financial products. So law enforcement's probably going to focus a lot of their time on traditional financial crime because that's where they can move millions of dollars around in what seems to be rather easily using many different proven methods. Cryptocurrency is still tough because even if you want to even if you want to move a lot of Bitcoin around and you're using the dark net, you're still relying on people that you can't. You're relying on other criminals, and there's a good chance that you send money to them, you may not get it back, and there's no way to trace them. So you have to take that into account as well. So I would think that that's where we're seeing the bigger jurisdictions: USA, Germany, the UK, even like South Korea, and other European companies. They are really pushing the cyber crime, and they're really following the money laundering. But there's other jurisdictions, just from what I see from an incoming law enforcement request point of view, where we're not seeing very much activity, where they're pretty much, it's still the wild, wild west, and not much will change in the near future.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I can add to that is that I think there's also a lack of knowledge on how to investigate these fully at this point. I think with traditional money laundering, there's sort of trends that we know we can apply and methodologies we can use. And even in terms of just technology advancements that have helped us better catch people within the financial sector. So I do think it's a space that's going to open up where once we do see supply increase, the need is going to be there to do more robust investigations, and also for the financial institutions to take it a little more seriously and then actually invest in it, and invest in the right experts.
Yeah, as one of my points, where it's expensive, right? The tools are expensive, the personnel is expensive. There's not a lot of people that have cryptocurrency compliance experience. One thing I can tell anyone looking to get in the field is just look at who the cryptocurrency companies are, and they have ability. You can apply even if there's not a position there. They have the ability to what they call general applications, where you can literally just sell them on the skills that you have, and they might even create a position for you. Obviously, it's a little tougher now due to COVID. Some of those companies are letting people go, but crypto exchanges are booming right now. People are trading cryptocurrency more than ever because of the halving, because of the fluctuation in price due to COVID-19, and a lot of other traditional businesses going out of business. And probably a lot of other traditional money laundering services, or the ability to launder money, going out of business. But and one person I know, she got an interview. She saw me post about a job a position that was opened up. She reached out to me. She reached out to Melanie. She brushed up on her technical stuff. She got a second interview. So, like, the jobs are there. You just have to approach them. You have to constantly being approaching these companies. Don't expect these jobs to pop up on Indeed or on LinkedIn. Many of the crypto compliance jobs aren't even posted publicly. They're through private networks. So figuring out who your network is, organizations like FinTrail out of the UK has a huge fintech community. So really find those communities and being a part of them. Now, everything is done virtually now. So even those communities that you didn't have access to before, they're free and you have access to them now. You can make tons of connections all around the world now using those free webinars and using LinkedIn.
Yeah, I almost thought you said the jobs are available on the darknet.
I don't probably not to fight the crime, but who knows?
Let me just check if there's any other questions. Nope, anything in the chats. I hope you guys are finding this insightful and are feeling engaged. Any waves that we can get from the chat? A vote of thanks and to say that you guys benefited from this, so we know we're doing a good job. Awesome content. Yay, we like to hear. Good job.
What's your guys' next session? Do you know?
I don't want to misspeak, but we do have a couple of sessions coming up. I know of 2 topics. I'm just not sure which one is coming first, so I don't want to. But check our website, carufp.ca, as well as if you're already a member, you get access to our newsletter, our monthly newsletter, which sort of details all our upcoming events. But we do have a webinar coming up for next month. And there might be another one at in the middle of this month, which will stand by. I don't think I'm allowed to announce it just yet. But
yeah.
Stand by.
Did you guys fill? You guys had like 1 million positions, like director, treasurer. Did you guys fill all those positions? Yeah,
we did.
That's amazing.
We have
That's amazing.
New board, and they're doing great. You met Charmaine; she's one of our new board members. members.
That's amazing. Yeah, Charmaine's been amazing.
She has, and
Yeah, she's run these slides perfectly.
yeah, in good time too. And then
Yeah.
my video on while I was eating. Perfect timing. Yeah, so for those of you, maybe I should just do a little spiel on CAFP. For those of you who are new to us and would like to join the CAFP membership, we do, outside of COVID, we do monthly meetings where we usually bring someone inspirational to sort of share their backstories, who's typically in the C-suite position, and it's a good way to network with people you don't typically see. For those of you who are still upcoming like me, trying to make their way up the corporate ladder. And so we do those on a monthly basis, usually have some soft drinks or cater to you some snacks at the end of those. And it's a great way to network in the community and just meet people that you typically wouldn't meet. And then we also have our professional development sessions, much like this one, just not virtually, where we sort of go on and hone in on some technical skills, things like data analytics, as we've seen this one on AML and cryptocurrency, and various other aspects, even soft skills. We cover that on presentation skills, of just how to network, how to build your resume. And so we do those on typically every other month, but we have them quite often. So if you are a member, you get access to all of those generally for free, except marquee events where we have like socials that we might have a discounted amount for you. And then we do usually have a social summer event, as well as a conference at the end of the year. So join if you want. Find information on cafp.ca. There is a members tab where you can sign up. There is a membership fee for the year, but it covers you for all our events for the year outside of marquee events.
That's amazing. I love what you guys are doing. I love how we've been able. We've both you and Meryl have come and spoken at our foreign professional events, and we really appreciate the amount of insight and the amount of expertise that you guys have been able to lend to us. And I'm glad I've been able to kind of return the favor and really see the coffee kind of move. I love seeing your guys' picture. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Awesome, thank you, Stephen. We're super excited. We've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm glad it's come together.
I know we talked about it for a long time. We always just say, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it.
COVID has brought us together. Okay, let me just double check if there's any last questions, and then we can sign out of this.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Unlike you, I didn't get to eat during my presentation. So.
Good on you. Nothing here. Just a bunch of thank yous in the chat. So I think we can sign off from here. We'll just wait another 2 minutes, Stephen and I, just in case there's last minute questions that come up. But for now, it seems like we're good to go.
Thank you guys so much, man. I really appreciate this, giving me the platform to do this on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's going to enjoy the weekend. What are you doing for the long weekend? Anything? They're saying they're going to let us out the house for the long weekend.
I'm working.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I've got.
So am I. But like, you work for a traditional institution, you should be working. You should be working.
Other than that, I'll probably. I just got myself furniture on my balcony, so I'm looking forward to sort of taking a chill on my balcony for the first time this summer or spring, I guess. Thank you, guys. I guess I should do a clap so it's not too virtual because people are clapping for you. So clap, Stevens.
Guys, this has been amazing. Honestly, like the fact that so much of my network follows me to not follows me, but like comes to these kind of events to support me is unbelievable. The amount of support I get and to keep on doing what I'm doing. So I'm glad I was able to hopefully bring some new members to you guys. Yeah. And hopefully we can collaborate on some other things too when we get moving. When people can see each other.
People are asking. Okay, sorry, just to mention again, guys, we will send out the presentation. We'll email it to you. We have your details based on how you registered for this event. So we'll send that.
Does anyone do anything with those presentations? Like, I wanted to ask a real question here. Like, it's hard for my presentations too because they're not really slide heavy from like a standpoint. So like you're gonna get like small point form notes. But I always wonder. I always ask for presentations too. I don't think there's been maybe 5% of the times I've actually opened it up, mostly to help look for ideas for my own presentations. But I always find it funny when people ask for presentations. I usually like to send it in a Google Doc that's restricted access to see if they've actually tried to get access to
So
it.
I've actually personally, so what's the last conference I went to was actually the ACAMS one where I bumped into you. And I did a presentation with my team. So I run monthly what we call COE, but Center of Excellence sessions,
Yeah,
and we'll usually cover a topic or something that's relevant in the AML world. So something like this I would share with them, and just any insights I learned and things that I found interesting. I think on a personal level, what I would use if I was to take your material is more the resources of how to learn more. I think that's a good segue. And then just like I remember the case, so if I ever wanted to use your case study and something else, I'd probably.
yeah,
Well, I actually keep my stuff, and I've referred to it when I had to present at work.
yeah. Like I look at my own presentation because I cut and paste. I like to do something different for each presentation. I think this is the best one I've done, like visually. I stepped up to Canva Pro here, so I was trying to go on the free trial, but I had to pay the $12.99 to get some fresh looks. Those icons don't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You gotta pay for them.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, sorry. There's someone who says that they do. Melissa, she says she talks about it with her team. So same.
oh, that's amazing.
See if there's any other for a non-member like me. Will I be able to? Yes. Anyone who registered for this event will have access to the slides.
Yeah, it was Melanie's idea. She actually she actually had the idea of the handouts, which is easier because then the handouts is just so much easier to kind of save and kind of use them.
I mean, I think sometimes there's just certain terminology. If anyone doesn't have a big background in Bitcoin or in this world, they might want to refer to some of the concepts that you did. So I think it also depends on how good the presentation is, right? There's some people where they just have diagrams and nothing, no words, no anything, and you won't be able to refer to anything.
Yeah.
Can you get paid a portion in? Oh, okay, another question. Can you get paid a portion in cryptocurrency for your job? And if so, do you?
Jason, that's a very personal question. I do not. I think the ability is there. Um, Unfortunately, I don't have much disposable income because I have 2 kids, so I need every cent of my paycheck, Jason. But if you don't, then it's a really actually great way to save some big portion of your income to use for trading. But a lot of companies do offer that ability to get paid in fiat and crypto, or just crypto.
What companies do this? Or is it just the crypto?
Crypto, yeah, mostly crypto exchanges because it's easy to facilitate. So, Jason, how do you get paid, and how much do you make? Maybe I should ask you some personal questions. No, I'm joking.
Just checking. Any questions? No. This was good. You guys were very interactive, and the fact that we still have like 70 people online is amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy right now. They probably just wonder what we're gonna say.
Should I
probably wondering
again?
they're probably wondering what your meal was. They're looking for some.
Should I actually share? No. Oh, Bode, good. You managed to come in. I think I got a note that you weren't able to come in. Is it Bode or Bol? I can't say your name properly. But I'm happy to see you managed to make it in. I got a note that you hadn't been able to come in. Awesome. The conversations. What else do you guys want us to talk about?
Yeah, we could go on all night. Right now, my wife's probably cussing upstairs. Like,
What were you eating? It was actually, if I keep it go right with what my fiance made, it was coconut rice. I did not make this. And mango curry chicken.
what? Aziza chef, yes. And the waiter, he brought that right to you at your desk, man. You have a nice setup.
It's just for today, I think, because I'm the one doing the work tonight.
All right, I'm gonna sign off because I'm starving.
I'm glad. I'm sure I helped. Yeah, I think we should sign off now. So thank you guys. We'll catch you at the next session. Stay tuned. CAFP is available also on Instagram. We are on all the social platforms, so LinkedIn. What else is there? Twitter, Facebook. I think we're not on Snapchat yet, but
I would like to see your snaps.
but we are on all the other social platforms. So if you want to find out more about us, check us out there. And we tend to post about our events then. And I think the next virtual events will also be posted, at least on our social LinkedIn and Instagram for sure. So please do sign up. As I mentioned, caufp.ca. You can sign up to become members. Definitely. I mean, I've been on this board for almost 3 years now. And I do not have any regrets. So please do join, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, guys, reach out to me if you guys have any questions. My email's there. You guys know I'll be on LinkedIn promoting this event tough for tomorrow. Make sure it got enough views. Let everyone know we had hundreds of people, millions of people on the event. But reach out to me anytime, you guys. If your organization needs anything, definitely reach out to me, Melanie. Anyone on my team really can help you guys out with organizing trainings, or if you have questions. If I'm going to plug something, check out my podcast. It's going to be not so much crypto compliance, but I have one that's crypto compliance with Giles and Russ from my team, and Giles from Grant Thornton, which is going to be more crypto compliance focused. The first couple episodes have already dropped, but we'll send you out some sneak peeks as well. That's going to be packed full of crypto compliance stuff from some of the best people in the industry.
Awesome. I'll be there, hopefully.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you guys all so much for staying up this late. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Vivian. Charmaine, you were perfect. You handled this. We spent, 40 minutes preparing yesterday, and it was seamless today. I can't wait. We should just do like a live chat, like me and you just chatting.
We can.
If you got, put your hands up if you want a live chat of just me and Viv eating and dishing dirt about working in the banks.
COVID. What would we call it? COVID.
COVID coffee. I don't know. All right, guys. Thanks so much, guys. Honestly, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing with coffee and the attendees. This has been amazing. I'm going to sign off now. Thanks so much, Viv.
Bye.
Thanks, Charmaine. Bye.
Charmaine, you can stop the broadcast.